Joining us, Bernarda Villalona, former senior prosecutor, trial attorney, joining us in New York. Also with us, Jeffrey Wolfe, criminal defense attorney in Denver, Colorado, and Joseph Maroma, another great criminal defense attorney in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Ladies first, of course, Bernarda. Come on. People know who this guy is. They know who the other two with the guns are. They've been patrolling that neighborhood for days. Someone's got to come forward. An 8-year-old girl is shot and killed. I mean, why would you not want to bring justice for that little girl? Why would you not want to make your neighborhood safer?
Vinny, you already know the slogan, snitches get stitches. And if this man, these group of people were capable of killing an 8-year-old girl, what do you think these people are going to worry about what will happen to them if they were to talk and give this guy up? Because there's no way that this guy is walking around with this type of long weapon, an AR-15 that's almost longer than him, and people don't know who he is. Obviously, people are scared. What I think may happen is that you may have a couple tips that are anonymous, but it's going to be very difficult to get someone to cooperate through trial to get a conviction in this case because the threat of retaliation is real.
Oh, absolutely. Starts with a tip. Starts with the tip. Absolutely. Joseph Maroma, the other thing that's happening in this story is this part of town completely transformed after the shooting death of Rayshard Brooks. Happened catty corner from where this shooting took place in that Wendy's parking lot. Police responded to a call there. They were met by, greeted by a mob. They were shoved. They were basically told to get out of there when they were responding to another shooting. And basically, it was like the wild, wild west down there, Joseph. What has to change here in cities like Atlanta and other places now where it's like the wild, wild west?
Well, what I think they need to do desperately is they need to get community leaders that have come forward, along with the mayor, who's very active. And I think she's very upset about this because it definitely it waters down the opportunity for their pushing racial justice and police accountability. And it also hurts the prosecution of Rayshard Brooks, because you got to remember the people that live there. This is the potential jury pool, and they're scared and they're not happy. But I really think they need community involvement, and they need people to come forward and begin to make them understand the effectiveness of police, and then to work with police on how they have to change and have better police policies. But if something isn't done to arbitrate this problem, okay, what you now have is some serious retaliation, and has really kind of diluted whatever movement they were having as a result of this. And you know, and the other thing is they brought in the National Guard, which shows that they can't even handle their own business locally, which is not good for local morale. So, I mean, you know, this is a bigger problem that really needs to be dealt with, and it's not going to happen overnight.
Jeffrey Wolfe, the problem here is you've got the protests, the anti-police sentiment, and it's understandable to a certain extent. But once you reach a certain point and then you've got no police, you've got 8-year-old girls getting shot because there's people walking around taking control of streets illegally, barricading streets. These are public streets. You're not allowed to just barricade a street, yet nothing is done to stop it because of what has been happening. How do we fix this? How do we get back to some semblance of law and order where, okay, the police get called when something bad happens. Someone is breaking the law, you can call the police.
Well, Vinny, what you have to understand is that just using the term law and order is a problem right now, because these riots are the voice of the unheard. And what we're seeing in certain communities throughout our country is we're seeing local politicians get involved on a very local, small level, and coming to these protests and making sure that people know their voices are heard. They're passing legislation. Here in Colorado, we passed the most comprehensive police reform bill within a week of the George Floyd protests. It went through, it got through on the first vote on both chambers of our House. Our school boards are involved. Denver Public Schools has removed police from the school, and people in our community are seeing action. They're not seeing lip service, and the violence that was coming with some of these protests is starting to dissipate. And I think that is what we need to start seeing. We need to start seeing the leaders, the local leaders, as was just pointed out, step up and do something. And the sooner they do something, the sooner these groups are going to start to be listening to the calmer heads that are in those groups, because there are extremely good community organizers and leaders in these groups in every city where these protests are happening, but their voices are getting drowned out when nothing is done. And that's when this violence comes into play, and that's when you have the disconnect between law enforcement and the public, and that leads to these types of tragedies, because this is a very real tragedy.
Bernarda, the whole point of police reform and everything else was to make things safer, right? Isn't it supposed to? It's about public safety, right? Less people dying, less people being hurt or shot. But the numbers are going up, 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 up as the police are being pulled out of these cities. I'm trying to figure out, isn't the end game here to make things safer so little girls like Secoriea can go to the store with her mother without getting shot?
Benny, that's the goal and that's the mission. Obviously, police officers, their mission is to keep the streets safe, But unfortunately, right now, during this time, there is such a distrust for police officers and also a lack of respect for police officers. So if there's no trust, there's no respect for the legal community, for law enforcement, how is it that the cops are supposed to work with the community to try to make it safe? You need both of them to work together to keep the community safe. But right now, it seems it's just an all-out war against the people, the civilians, against the police officers. And it's just going to get worse and worse.
Joseph, the problem is when it gets worse and worse, it's innocent people who get killed, like little Secoriea. And she's not the only child who's fallen to this increase in gun violence in cities. I mean, I'm trying to make some sense of this, and it's not making sense to me. It's not making sense. And it's about safety. Safety first, and things are less safe now than they were before.
Listen, you're definitely not going to defund the police department with these actions, that's for sure. You need police, and this at least, I think, answers that question. You can't defund the police department. Does the police department need an overhaul? Does it need to improve its policies and procedures? No question, and I think that would help out a lot. But you need to communicate with the community, the black leaders, and you need the black leaders to communicate to their community to make them assure their community that the police department are doing things to improve and work better with them. Because without a police department, I mean, you're going to have chaos and you're going to have events like this, which is, I mean, unspeakable. I mean, this young girl was with her family, her mother. She was parking to go somewhere, and she was gunned down. There was young kids running around with assault weapons. I mean, for it to get to this point, and the sad part is, you know, and I know this mayor does a great job down there. She really works hard, and she's really disappointed by this, and she's taken back. It really hurts whatever momentum she was getting with the local black leaders. I know there's a guy down there by the name of Killer Mike. He's a rapper, but he's a big community leader. He was outspoken during the George Floyd case. I mean, listen, what he has to do, guys like that, she has to continue to come forward and keep people together and let them work and try to get better. But when it goes in this direction, and then you've seen what happened. I already said it, the National Guard came, and that pretty much tells you that, you know, you can't handle your own business. So, I mean, that doesn't do much for the morale.